Welcome to This Week in Habsland. I am Jordan, and I'm joined by my co-host Brian, and we are here each Monday to discuss all things Montreal Canadiens. You can find us on social media at Blue Sky and TikTok at Habsland Pod. On this week's episode of the podcast, we will talk about the Habs' up and down road trip, a big win on Saturday against the Florida Panthers, and treat the Canadiens like a bit of a Build-a-Bear store in our final segment. But first, Brian, this is our 100th episode of the podcast, and I couldn't think of a better way to commemorate it with Christian Dvorak scoring his 100th goal on Saturday night. How did that make you feel?
Good for him, man.
Yeah.
Good for him. It's very poetic that my scapegoat on this podcast gets his 100th right before we record our 100th episode.
Yeah.
But all in all, good for him. 100 goals in the NHL is an absolutely amazing achievement. To have scored that many goals, I think, in any professional league is an achievement, but to do it in the best league in the world, good for you, Christian Dvorak. Happy for you, buddy. It's a shame that only about 3 of those have been in a Habs jersey, but no, that's an exaggeration, the opposite of an exaggeration, an understatement. But yeah, good for you. Good for you.
It's almost 3 years ago to the day where we had our very first conversation about the podcast, which was we got together with some friends to watch that terrible 22 Canadiens team lose a shootout game to ironically, the Seattle Kraken, who we probably will talk about a little bit in this week's episode. 3 goal scorers that they were Nick Suzuki, Michael Pezzetta, and Alex Romanov. So some things change, some things don't change. I think Ben Chirot had a big game. Montembeault was in nets. So that was March 12th, 2022. It took us a couple months to keep thinking about it. We practiced. We did a couple tape recordings that no one will ever hear. I'm pretty sure we've destroyed all evidence of those practice episodes. And then come June or July, near the Slavkovsky draft, we did a couple episodes, and that's what launched us into doing this podcast. So yeah, it's been 100 episodes. Been a great ride so far. Thank you everyone for listening, and I hope we haven't annoyed you too much, because we're about to do it even more.
Yeah, absolutely. And how poetic is it that I think the very first important conversation we had was about Slavkovsky.
Yeah.
And look how well he's playing now. We'll get to that, but I was thinking about that last night watching the game. Like, that was the first sort of everything we discussed was the draft and how we were both kind of interested in Slavkovsky, and wow, that would be surprising if they went that way. And they did in fact go that way, and thank goodness they did, because he looks like a star now.
I will say, credit to you. I think when we did our final predictions of that draft, I think I said 20% chance they take Slavkovsky. I think you were much closer to 50, if not higher. I think you had...
It wasn't over... I think I said 40-ish, 45 maybe at most. I think he was definitely the top for me, but...
I think you hedged a bit. I put 10% on Cooley, mostly on right. I don't even know. You maybe put nothing on Cooley. I think you gave it a much bigger chance than I did, and look how far we've came. I mean, they've all had good careers so far, all the 3 forwards, so I don't think there's been a wrong pick. So...
And 100 episodes in, this is a really nice moment to actually start talking about playoffs for real. Yeah. I think any time we've ever talked about playoffs on this pod, it's either been a joke, at least in the past few seasons, not this one. But this season, it's been like, what would they have to do to get into a playoff position? And meanwhile, they're like, 8 points back or something, and it seems very far-fetched. It is not far-fetched anymore, Jordan, not at all. The Habs are currently in the pole position for the second wildcard spot. And I say the second wildcard spot because catching the Senators, who are playing some very, very good hockey, they've won 6 in a row. They're 7-2-1 in their last 10. So catching them while they're red hot might be difficult. But catching the New York Rangers, who are a point ahead with 1 less game in hand, certainly feasible. I think the Montreal Canadiens are now in the best position of any team in the East, especially because of the schedule strength. They're sort of middle of the pack in terms of schedule strength, whereas the Rangers have a little bit of a more difficult schedule at the moment, and Columbus also has a fairly difficult schedule coming up as well. And those are basically the 2 teams that are still in contention, and then Detroit has the hardest schedule of anybody in the league. They play 4 relatively easy teams: Boston, Utah, the Blues, and the Canadiens, and none of those are like bottom dwellers, but then they have to play Florida twice, Vegas twice, they play Dallas, the Hurricanes, Colorado. Like, that's a tough schedule. Washington.
Yeah.
So Habs are in the best position right now, and the way that they're playing, this could be real. What do you think?
So a couple things. How I'm choosing to look at it right now, because it's already becoming exhausting to be like, they're in a playoff spot. They're 1 point out. They're in 13th. They're suddenly in 9th. Like, it's the 2 questions I ask myself when I look at the standings in the morning. How many teams are within 4 points of the final wildcard spot? And of course, the second question is, are the Canadiens one of those teams? We're not quite at the spot, I think, of like they're in the playoff spot. They need to be in that playoff spot. It's more like how many teams are kind of still hanging around? And are the Canadiens one of those teams? Not to make it in the mix language, but like I think that's how I'm viewing it rather than like, oh, they're 1 point out. Oh, they're in the wild card spot. Let's get to game 74, 75, and then we can be like 1 point. It's too soon for right now. It's like stay in the pack, stay with the group, stay with. I think it's the Rangers is the big team to watch. Columbus would be the other. I think you correctly assessed it. Detroit's also just been spiraling like crazy. Pittsburgh suddenly there's something going on. I don't know, but I think they're a little bit further back. I think that they wouldn't meet that 4 point criteria as of recording on Sunday morning.
Right.
Boston's kind of still hanging around. So like that's how I would view it. So it's like 4 or 5 teams right now within that 4 points of the last wild card spot plus those teams. And the Canadiens are one of those teams. So they're in it. When we get to this time next week, I will ask the same question. And if it's maybe one less team within 4 points and the Canadiens are still one of the teams, it's great. It's like musical chairs and like slowly there's less and less space. As long as they're one of those teams, then we get to the final 6 or 7 games and it's like, okay, now you need to get that spot. So yeah, I mean, you laid it out with the strength of schedule. It's balanced a bit for the Canadiens. And if you look at the next week or two coming up, it's not the easiest schedule. They're playing either teams directly involved in the wild card chase or, I mean, Colorado at the end of next week is just, I mean, I don't think they can catch Winnipeg, but they're also trying to get home ice at least if they're going to play Dallas in the first round. Every game is important. I think they're in a good position. They're playing very well. If we talk about zooming back, I guess, in the week that was, listen, the Seattle game, I don't think they deserve to win it for a variety of reasons, but the fact that they were up 4-2 with 15 minutes left, I forget exactly when the Slavkovsky goal went in, you can't lose that game. You just can't. And if there's a 1 point difference at the end of the season, I would likely point towards the terrible start, and I want to get into that in a second, but most people I think would point to the Seattle loss, which again, Seattle was by far and away the better team. The Canadiens turn it on eventually, and then Slavkovsky, that was a high stick. Like, I don't know how that goal still counted to make it 4-2.
Yeah, I agree. That was very kind of obvious.
It was kind of karmic of like, well, give them 1 point, get them the heck out of there. I thought they played really good hockey against Vancouver on, was that Monday night or Tuesday night? And then Saturday against the Panthers. Man, the Habs have just played the Panthers really well this year. And I don't think that is a potential first round matchup because that they would, if they win the division, that's likely the number 1 wild card team would play them. And the Canadiens, who are more likely to get a number 2 wild card spot, would get Washington. I would still be absolutely terrified of the Panthers. And they're missing some big guys right now, but it doesn't change the fact that the prototypical playoff team right now, the Canadiens have played very, very well and have had some of their best performances of the season against them.
Yeah, absolutely. The speed with which they came out of the gates, I think, was the biggest element that just put the Panthers on their heels right away, which you have to do against them. If the Panthers put you on your heels, you're losing in a blowout.
Yeah.
So you have to take them on right from the start, get going really fast, and that's exactly what the Montreal Canadiens did. I want to touch on that Kraken game because a big topic of conversation was that face-off in overtime that everybody's up in arms about. You shouldn't have had to have that face-off.
Yeah.
That's the thing here. Like, it's like getting mad at an umpire for striking you out, like calling what might have been a ball a strike. Well, you struck it. You swung the bat at strikes 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. So you brought it upon yourself. You shouldn't have put yourself in that position. It's the same with the Canadiens here. You shouldn't have gone to overtime at all. And if that ends up being the difference between playoffs and not playoffs, you could point to about 1,000 different things during the regular season too, because this is not the only time the Montreal Canadiens have had a lead and lost it. And that happens in hockey. It's a random game, but you got to tighten up in a game that, despite the fact you didn't deserve to win, you need to win some games you didn't deserve to win to get in when you're this close. So on the Seattle game, I think that's really the ticket here. I was upset about the faceoff for maybe like a second, and then I was like, well, they shouldn't have been in that position anyway. Good for you, Seattle. You deserved it more than us. Yep. So, props to you.
I've been tracking this for a bit, and there's if I waited a week, it could get better, but it also might get worse. This might be the apex of it. First 15 games of the season, Canadiens are 4-9-2, terrible at hockey. They didn't play well. Since then, last 51 games, some would say that's a big sample size.
Oh, yeah.
28, 18, and 5. Brian, that is a 98-point pace
That's a playoff team.
That is a playoff team over the last 51 games. Now the first 15 count. It is what it is. Like those.
Yep.
That is part of the regular season. There's a chance that if they have a good week, that they will have played at a 100-point pace for close to 60 games, and that's
wow.
There's still struggles in there. We're not forgetting what happened before the Four Nations, and there's one of my second headline is a bit related to that, but they've been playing really good hockey for a while now, and it's been consistent, and it's not just this one wave that they got at the end of December and early January. They've been pretty good for a while. Let's hop into my first headline, and that is, like ASAP Ferg in future in 2015, the Montreal Canadiens first line is on a new level. Last 10 games, outscore their opponents 18-3. Like,
that's pretty good.
I think that's it. I think we can close up shop.
Amazing.
That'll do. So before that, they were basically 50-50. I don't have the exact number is something like 28-4 or 29 against. Coin flip 50-50, goals for, goals against. Since then, it's just been unreal. Coming back from the Four Nations, Suzuki right away was man on fire. I think we've correctly assessed the first half of the season. Caulfield was the better player. And there's just been this wave of Nick Suzuki just getting better and better. And now he's peaked in these last 10 games. And what's also happened is Juraj Slafkovsky has showed up.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And he's between, like, when the indicator for me of like, oh boy, this line is here. It's when Slav and Caulfield are making plays in the defensive zone and Slav chooses to shoot the puck. If those two things are happening, you know what you're getting out of Nick Suzuki. He's been just crushing it now for 10 games post Four Nations. It's diabolical the way this first line has been playing. You saw like the chemistry with the Caulfield goal on Saturday night against the Panthers, where that's pure chemistry. That is Slav just waiting just long enough because he knows exactly where Caulfield's going to go. And he waits just long enough for Caulfield, and Caulfield is also patient with the puck and then finds the net. Like, they've played more or less most of the last 2 seasons together, so you would expect a lot of good chemistry. But when everything is rolling and everyone's playing well, they are a top tier line in the NHL, right? There's no debating at this point.
No question. I mean, proof of that is in the 10 games following the Four Nations break, Suzuki is first in points in the entire NHL, 17 points, those being 5 goals, 12 assists. He's +9 in that span, which I didn't check that because who cares about plus minus, but he's probably at the top of the league as well in that. Caulfield, 4th in goals in the NHL with 7. He's got 12 points in the 10 games. Slafkovsky's tied for 5th in goals in the NHL in that span with 6. And he's he's got 11 points. So, one less than Caulfield, but still well over a point per game. Pretty incredible stuff from those three. I love your assessment of Slafkovsky shooting the puck because that's something we weren't seeing prior. I think the break did him some good. There was speculations from us and from everybody else that he might have been dealing with some type of injury or a hindrance. Injury is probably too strong a word, but something that was bugging him. Doesn't seem to be the case anymore. And then Caulfield and Suzuki are on a revenge tour of, okay, you didn't want us on Canada USA. We're going to absolutely torch the entire NHL for the rest of the season. And also in Suzuki's case, that conversation that we talked about last week with Kent Hughes, where the ball was in his court, and in order to keep the team as is and fight for a playoff spot, Suzuki had to deliver, and he absolutely has been. He's been the best player in the league since then. And I also want to bring our attention to 2 other guys who aren't on this line but have been incredible. And oh wow, come to think of it, it's the entire first power play unit.
Yeah.
It's Hudson with 11 points, 1 goal, 10 assists. He's a +6. And then Laine, 4 goals, 5 assists for 9 points in that span, but he's a -2. So that's really the telling thing here, is that Hudson, power play or not, Hudson's been incredible. Laine needs the power play so gosh darn badly to be at a similar level to the rest of these guys, because that line hasn't figured it out yet. I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. It just hasn't clicked yet, I think, because Roy's been playing decent. Newhook is finding a groove. They just need a little more time, I think, to get that chemistry. But it's all about the first line, and then throw Hudson in a little bit and Laine on the power play. And that's really been the story here of the last 10 games.
So they finally got a goal at 5-on-5, the Newhook goal against Seattle that Patrick Laine assisted on.
Yeah.
Laine is just ridiculous. It's just what he's been able to it's just always, it's the same spot. It's the same shot. Positioning of the shot, like where he shoots it, obviously is changing a bit here and there. It's usually high shoulder,
feet, yeah.
But like it's just unstoppable. That he has now, is it 13 or 14 power play goals? I'm losing track. He scored 2 this week. So that might be 14 out of 17 or 13 out of 16. Anyways, like he has 3 goals at 5-on-5 through almost 40 games, but it doesn't matter because he's still scoring at a 40-goal pace because of how undeniable he is on the power play. What I think, like, this does go well with the first line discussion of like the first line is doing this right now with really no other, not even comparable, but like complementary second or third or fourth line. Like while the Armia, Evans, Heineman line hasn't had the juice it had earlier in the season, but it's still been fine. Dvorak line with Gallagher and Anderson's been okay. Second line's been kind of ho-hum at 5-on-5, and I think that just makes what the first line is doing even more impressive. Because when you're game planning against the Canadiens right now, it's very easy. It's like, okay, there's the Suzuki line, and then we don't really have to worry about anybody else.
Yeah.
So
100%.
my question to you, Brian, is this is the team we have for the season. Let's fast forward to game 78, where it's very much Habs 1 point out. They need to win these games. What is your second line? Because we've seen different machinations since Kirby Dach went down. Owen Beck had a little bit of a trial run at center. Now we have Joshua Roy trial run at wing. You could talk me into Jared Davidson being called up. You can maybe talk me into Sean Farrell being called up, although less so. What is the second line? Biggest game of the season in 3 weeks. What are they doing as their second line? Because this is going to, the margins are going to matter more and more as we go down the stretch. And a productive second line at 5-on-5 is the biggest weakness right now.
I think a few weeks ago, my answer would have been very easily, you just put the Jake Evans, Emil Heineman, and Yoel Armia line in there, and you have quite a defensive second line, and you counter the opposition with that, and you suffer from it. That being said, you said they've been okay. I think that's probably the best way to put it because they're still playing well defensively, but basically no offense coming from those guys. I don't think Emil Heineman has a point in his last 10 games. I could be wrong, but I don't remember one. So it's not them. I would hope that in the 12 games, I think, before your game 78 that you're saying is the big one, I would hope that they find chemistry. I'm not touching it. Honestly, okay. I'm not touching it, and maybe that's the wrong answer. I'm very curious to see what you think, but I'm certainly not.
So Roy at wing with Newhook at center over Beck at center and Newhook at wing.
I think so. I want to see more from Roy.
Okay.
I want to see more from Roy because at this point, he's playing better than he had been when he was sent down initially, and I think it's just a matter of them finding chemistry. That being said, so I'm kind of ambivalent, actually. That's the truth. Because as you say, Beck coming back into center and then Newhook going back to the wing, that would work as well. I'm fine with that. And then Roy goes to the third or fourth. Like, whatever. I don't know. It's just so clear that there's a big hole there. But what would you go with?
I would probably lean on what I think is a more consistent center play with Owen Beck, and that frees up Alex Newhook to be a winger again. Like, I think that, like, what's better, Newhook at center or Newhook at wing? I think it's still Newhook at wing, even though there's mounting evidence that Newhook at center feels a bit more confident in it. But I think that's more for his own game and not necessarily the line's performance. And then what do you feel more comfortable with? Is Owen Beck at center or Josh Roy at wing? I mean, the alternatives, of course, are like you could flip Jake Evans into that second line center role. I just think there's a massive gap in offensive capability when you go up there.
Yeah, of course.
And at that point, I would just rather put Beck in that role. And it is what it is. Like, they need to stay afloat. There's not going to be a great solution this year. There isn't. I'd probably lean Owen Beck, but we'll see. I'm not sure if what the Habs are doing right now is just making sure Laval is staying in that top spot and battling for home ice through the first 3 rounds of the playoffs, or it's legitimately like, okay, this is just audition time, and we're going to bring one guy up at a time. They're each going to get 3-4 games, and then by game 75, it's this guy now.
Yeah.
So there's no great.
Well,
there's
it's
no great
clear
option.
that Laval flies out the window in terms of importance if the Montreal Canadiens are in the playoffs. Yeah. Beck is with the team. Like, you're not questioning that anymore. The second they drop out of it, Beck goes back down and they dominate. But as for, like, because you also mentioned, like, do you bring up Davidson? Do you bring up somebody else? I don't think so. I don't think that anybody else is ready at the same level that Roy is. Like, Roy is probably the most ready of anybody of the forward group in Laval, and even he is not cut out yet for a top 6 role. Let's just be honest. I think the entire second line, other than Patrick Laine, is better suited to a third line role. And that's just what it is. And so all these guys are just going to have to step up. That's what it is, Jordan, is like, it's an imperfect situation. Demidov's not here yet, and we don't have a second line center. I can't imagine the strength of this team next year. Are you kidding me? With those guys and like Reinbacher coming eventually, like let's not get ahead of ourselves, because we could talk about this for another 15 minutes, and we have in the past. We've done speculations. But yeah, there's just no real perfect answer. Despite the fact that Kirby Dach was imperfect for most of the season, we do miss him at center there. I think he was a better, at least in terms of play driving, better at play driving than Alex Newhook is. Maybe similar to Beck, but a little more playmaking. So there's really no perfect solution here.
The only thing with Roy, and I think it's really the mixture with Newhook, is Newhook plays so fast. And I'm not talking about processing. I'm talking about literally how fast he moves, and Roy being able to catch up and keep pace, because that's Roy's biggest weakness, quite frankly. Like, he's had an all right season in Laval, maybe not the take the bull by the horns type of season, but when you watch him now, it's like, okay, it's the foot speed that's still the issue. There's a reason you're a 4th round pick. He's defied so many of the odds because he works hard. He's a smart hockey player. He's intelligent defensively. I don't know if the mixture with Newhook makes enough sense. And then Patty, like, Line A is just kind of like, let's survive this until I get to my next power play shift. That's kind of, which is fine. Like, it's, again, could, like, if he was healthy all season, he could legitimately score single digit 5-on-5 goals and still get to 40.
Easily.
So
easily. 40 is probably too low. I love that you drew our attention to the disparity in speed between Roy and Newhook, and not between Line A and Newhook, because that one's ridiculous. I mean, Line A doesn't have to move that fast because his strides are about 20 feet long, but the disparity in speed between those two is astounding. But what Line A does really well, and that Roy has not figured out yet, is that with relatively slow foot speed, what you have to do is slow the game down for everybody else. And what Line A is great at is he gets the puck, and he just immediately, you feel the pressure melt away, because he'll put the puck between his legs and find space, deke a guy. He'll put the puck into the corner, something like that. He's very, very good at dissipating pressure and making it so that I don't have to move my feet that fast. If I'm in control of this game, it doesn't matter. And then Newhook's just like a roadrunner, just going everywhere. A rebirth of Cornway.
Again, I keep the Newhook stuff is still very interesting, because, like, what the heck was going on in those first 30 games of the season?
I don't know. It's fascinating. Like, it's absolutely fascinating,
because he has just continued to click and click and click, and like slowly return to what, like, I think it's fascinating to look at that the whole second line. Like, there's a whole subplot this season of whoever has been on the second line. It's been like, what the hell is, like, Kirby Dach, the rough season. Slavkovsky, when he was put there, was like, what is he doing? Alex Newhook for basically the first 30 games of the season, where it's like he had 5 goals, 0 assists. Since then, he's been back to what we expect from Alex Newhook. And Line A is just kind of, again, like, let's just survive these 13 minutes I play every night so I can get to the power play. Mixing in Owen Beck, mixing in Joshua Roy. Jake Evans had his moment. There was a point where, like, the actual second line became the Evans line, even in I think the Canadiens posted it on their social media one day. Like, the second line has been a fascinating, it's not even a subplot. It's been one of the most important pieces, but it's because it's been so transient in terms of, like, who's there and what's going on. And it's kind of this, like, weird in-between zone, almost like a purgatory of, like, guys trying to get out of a funk, but it's never been able to you can never bring all 3 guys out of it at one time. It's been really weird.
Right. Yeah. And it just goes to show, I mean, we started this whole discussion with talking about how the first line is on a new level. If they didn't reach that new level, we're not talking about playoffs at all. We're 10 points out at the very least. So many of these games have been won because Suzuki has a 3-point night. Caulfield scores 2 goals. Slavkovsky's everywhere hitting everything. And they're jiving on the power play. Without that, like, this season doesn't happen. This run, and that we hope eventually gets the playoffs, does not happen.
Okay, quick yes or no. Caulfield gets the 40?
Yes.
Okay.
Unequivocally, yes.
Last headline, and this is a question. Is it causation or is it correlation? And this is in discussion of Samuel Montembeault and his performance recently. I am choosing to treat Saturday night as a 3-0 shutout win, because Sam Bennett set the most beautiful pick before Florida's goal.
Stunning.
Now, the only issue with that is, I love a good screen, is that we weren't playing basketball on Saturday night. We were playing hockey. The look in Mike Matheson's eyes, it was both, are you effing kidding me? You didn't call that? And he's like, do you not know how much these fans dislike me this year? You're really going to make me put me on the ice for another goal against, or I'm clearly like the guy who like, quote, lost his man. But it's like, also like, it's not a hockey play. Cause like if Bennett rolls over Matheson, then I think it absolutely gets called. But like, what is the hockey play that Bennett is actually making here? Because, like, no one ever rushes towards the back of the net without the puck where your teammate already is.
No, it was perfect. His intent was absolutely to set a pick and do it subtly enough without knocking Matheson over.
But it wasn't subtle. It would be, if it was subtle, it would have been, like, in front of the net, because that's where someone without the puck should go.
But
he ran towards behind the net. Like, it's not a...
I understand. I just mean that Matheson didn't get knocked onto his butt. He was still standing. And so, you could call interference. Maybe they should have. The fact that they called interference later, I guess it was a trip on the zone entry when he was literally just standing there. So there was a little bit of... you could call it bias or you could call it bad refereeing. Whatever it is, it was a nice pick.
I also think interference is a penalty that you can probably call 5 times a game. I think you can call that so damn often on the defenseman, holding up guys at the blue line. You can honestly call it on a lot of forwards, like finishing their checks in the offensive zone when the defenseman hasn't had the puck for 7 seconds. Anyways, point is, Samuel Montembeault was fantastic on Saturday night. Big save towards the end of the game. And Monty's now up to 8th in the NHL in goals saved above expected per 60, which is, again, I think the most indicative stat of really good goaltending. Towards the top of that list, obviously, you have Connor Hellebuck. You have Logan Thompson in Washington. He's 4th overall in goals saved above expected if you get rid of the per 60. So that kind of weighs in a bit the workload that he's dealt with. An interesting stat here, Brian. Samuel Montembeault has played 2,752 minutes this year. That's a little over 300 more than he has last year. So 300 more minutes. He's only faced 10 more shots in those 330 extra minutes.
That makes a difference.
So I'm wondering how much of Monty was always this good. He just was getting peppered like crazy. Not to say that the defense has gone that much better. It's more that they have the puck more often. Because I think
the defense has gotten better though too.
Sure, to an extent,
definitely.
But it's not that they've become this rock of a defensive team. It's more like, well, we have the puck 4 more minutes per game now, so Monty's not getting peppered enough. And when he's not getting destroyed like that, he's a bit fresher, and he makes his save percentage is basically the same as it's been the last 2 or 3 seasons. But his goals against, I think, has gone down by 1/3 of a goal. And I think that to me shows that, hey, when this guy's not getting caved in, it's like you're uncovering a bit of a diamond in the rough. Not to call him like that, like a diamond in the rough, but there's a really good goalie in here that's been getting, I think, the short end of the stick by some local, some national media. And now it's kind of we're uncovering of it's when he's facing when he has an average, let's say, defensive unit in front of him and he's getting a bit more support, turns out his numbers turn around. I think he's been great. I think he's been along with Dobesh, this has been a really good run these last 10 games. I want to get into my question in a second. But what do you think about, what have you thought about Montembeault's performance over the past couple weeks?
I think he's been really great. He's been giving the team opportunities to win. And you're absolutely right. I mean, look, recency, I'll jump to this, 22 shots against a really good high-octane Florida team. You only give up 22 shots and your goalie's half decent even. Forget really good like he was, but even half decent, and you're probably winning that game. And that's what it was. And so I think you're dead on. The fact that the team has the puck a lot more is a huge factor in that. And the fact that the PK is working really well. Because historically, Monty, I remember, 2 things. One thing that he had trouble with was on the PK, point shots with screens. Teams were just doing that to him constantly, and he was getting scored on a lot. The other thing that was an issue for Montembeault is when he would get 10 shots against in the first 4 minutes, 2 of those would go in, and then the walls just come down. And he's not himself because he's been scored on already, and then the team can't come back. And those are the games that were affecting his goals against average and his save percentage, because he'd get 40 shots against and let in 6 goals, and the walls just came down. But now he's not getting peppered like that, so he can get into a groove faster. For some goaltenders, they don't like it when they don't get many shots early, like they want to get into a game. I don't think that's the case for Monty. He's been great in games where he only gets like 2-3 shots in the first half of the first period, and he's still in it, like he's still sharp. So I think those are really sort of the points that have changed for Montembeault, and a huge factor of that is the team. So you asked correlation or causation. There's some causation in there, certainly. Montembeault, I don't want to take anything away from him, so I'd say maybe it's half-half because his play has improved, but the play of the team, the play of the defense, keeping the puck, possession more often, those are all huge, huge factors in this.
I think a good microcosm of this discussion is, and I have another question too, but to close the loop on this one is, and I brought it up a couple weeks ago when it happened, is the Carolina game, where there's a Carolina game from 2 years ago where he has 46 saves or something, and Canadians lose 3-0. He's incredible. But 3 goals against the 45 saves. The game 2 weeks ago against Carolina, what did he have? 20 shots? And it was a shutout?
Yeah.
Like, he is just as good in that game as he was in the game 2 years ago. You could argue he was better 2 years ago because he needed to be, but they lost. But now, because the teams got it a bit more together, you're seeing like, oh, that's right. Like the goalie is really good. Like he is an above average or slightly above average starting goaltender, I would say. I don't know if we're doing the rankings, but like maybe he's around 20th in the NHL, something along those lines. I think that's it's slowly coming to light. My question though, so continuing on the causation or correlation, what does it say about the Canadiens that their 2 biggest runs that they've gone on this season, the one from mid to late December through mid-January, so that's probably the Panthers game to the Leafs game, and then the current one, post Four Nations, has coincided with their best goaltending performances. That first one was Dobish's brand new 940 save percentage in his 5 games. Montembeault was playing well. And now we have this new one where it's much more Montembeault just being a man on fire. Dobish has been fine. I think we're learning that he can't really play the puck behind the net, but for the most part, Dobish has been a more appropriate backup goaltender. What does it say that the 2 big runs that the Habs have gone on has completely coincided with the best goaltending they've gotten all season? Is the goaltending making the team look better? Because part of me is like, because also like the gap in the middle is what happens. The goaltending drops back down to earth, and the team cratered for like 2 weeks before the Four Nations. So what do you think about that?
Yeah. I think it's completely cyclical. You watch your goaltender make a huge save when it's tied, and you go out and work that much harder the next shift, and the goalie sees you working that much. Like it's entirely cyclical. It's a product of the team having the puck more, as you said. So I don't want to put everything on the goaltending because that's not the main storyline here. We said the main storyline was the first line. They've been absolutely sensational, but the goaltending does help. Do you think that it's the goaltending causing everything? Do you think it's the team? Do you think it's both?
It's a team sport.
Yeah.
It's everybody contributing. This isn't Carey Price in 2015.
Exactly.
Right? This is not Jose Theodore in 2002. This is like, this isn't Halak in 2010 playoffs. This isn't Ure in 2008. Like,
we're not winning 1-0.
But what I will say is when the goaltending is really good, this team is, you have those moments where you're like, wait a second. What can they do something? Like something moderately will win a playoff round? Like when the goaltending is this good, it's more than just like, oh, we're in the mix. Like it jumps up a level when the goaltending is this good.
The question is,
long.
Can they string together that many good games against a team like Florida, for instance? I mean, we have 2 more tests against them, a back-to-back at the end of March and then beginning April, the 30th and then the 1st. So there's a back-to-back, a home and away. That'll be a big test because you have to be able to beat that team 4 times out of 7. And it's one thing to play that well and the goaltending to be that good in one game. But once Florida starts to sniff out your weaknesses after game 3 and 4,
we'll see.
Are the Canadiens going to be able to do it with just a top line, a 4th line, a good power play and penalty kill, and good goaltending? That's the real question. Yeah.
Well, the good part of it, I guess, is if the Canadiens make the playoffs, it would likely be Washington in the first round, which is, I think, much more favorable.
Yeah, you've said before you think they're kind of phony, like they're not as good. My dad said the same thing. He watches a lot of hockey. He said the exact same thing, that he doesn't really believe in Washington. I kind of do.
We'll see.
But maybe I'm just enamored with Ovechkin's chase where he's within like 6 or 7.
What's going to happen though is that the Caps are going to have, I think, a pretty easy walk to the conference final. They're going to play the number 2 wildcard team and then probably a psychologically messed up Hurricanes team.
Yeah, fair enough.
Or a banged up Devils team. Like Whoever comes through the Metro is going to be feeling nice and fresh, I think, whereas whoever comes through the Atlantic will have gone through at least 2 wars, because like Ottawa's not going to be a joke. So whoever gets the division, it's not as easy as they thought it was. Anyways, discussions for another day. Brian, I'm really excited to get into part 2 of the episode. This is an idea that you have been concocting, I want to say, for close to a year. So please explain it to the audience before we dive in.
So I called it the build-a-Hab draft. I also thought about the attributes draft. It's the Build-A-Bear draft, Jordan. When you said that at the top of the episode, I laughed. It's perfect. What we're basically going to be doing here is drafting players from the current Montreal Canadiens as well as a couple from history, and you can only take one of their attributes. So for instance, let's say first overall pick, I'm just going to make one up. This will not be the first overall pick, but you love Mike Matheson's skating enough that you think that would make the best possible hockey player. I'm taking Mike Matheson's skating. And then maybe you go next and you take Caulfield's shot or something. So we're going to go back and forth and take one attribute each from each player. Once the player has been selected by either one of us, nobody else can take them. So, once Matheson's off the board, you can't then take him for another attribute later. He's gone. We've got 8 picks each, and these are the attributes that we're going to be choosing for. The first 6 we took from Elite Prospects, the way that they rank the draft eligible players each season in their draft guide, which if you haven't checked them out, they're awesome. I mean, you've heard us talk about them a good 3 dozen times on the podcast before because they do incredible work. So Elite Prospects, check them out. Their attributes are skating, shooting, passing, puck handling, hockey sense, physicality. And then we've added in 2 more just to make it a little more all-encompassing and include more players. We're adding in defense and we're adding in size. Now, I think I've said it all, but I want you to throw in your idea that you added to this because I absolutely love it about the historical players.
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of celebrate our 100th episode. So the idea is you have to pick, or you have 2 kind of bonus picks. So there's 8 total picks. 6 of them have to be from current rostered players. Your kind of 2 wild card picks are 1 player from pre-centennial, so to that, and thank you to Bob Gainey for basically flipping the team over in 2009, where this becomes a really easy divide.
Yeah, it makes it easy.
So maybe there's some guys that shot of the line and we can discuss it, but it's very easy of like a Kovalev, Koivu, Surrey, like they're all before 2009. So anyone before 2009, that's your first wild card pick, and your other wild card pick is post-centennial, so post-2009, but not on the current roster, obviously. So those are your 2 bonus picks. You can take them whenever in the draft. But yeah, 6 guys from the current squad and then those two wild card picks. Brian, do we have a draft order?
We don't. I proposed doing a serpentine draft just because that's fair. It's going to be a lot of each of us making 2 picks in a row. But I think that's probably the fairest way to do it. Do you agree?
I will propose that first we do 1, then let's do snake for the first 2 rounds and then go back to normal.
Okay, I'm fine with that. So the first person gets 1 and 4. The other person gets 2 and 3. And then after 4, it just goes back to normal back and forth. Okay, I like that better. That's going to be more fun. Now, the question is, do you want the first pick? Do you want the second pick? How are we doing this? I think either way, we're both going to come up with 2 really good Build-A-Bear hockey players.
Yeah, no, I'm not worried. I think some of these wild card selections are going to make the kind of buoy the quality of the Build-A-Bear. I don't have a strong preference, Brian, between the first pick versus 1 and 4 versus 2 and 3. So unless you do, I'll concede, since this was your grand idea. You can have the first pick in the draft.
All right, I will take the first pick in the draft if you're giving it to me. And as I say that, I don't know what I want. This is really difficult.
Good job preparing for the last 6 months for this moment.
I was hoping you would take, because sometimes you're selfish. You're like, I want the first pick. I was hoping you would say that. I think, and this might be crazy, but I think that I want Nick Suzuki's hockey sense.
Oh, okay.
Really? Okay, good. I made the right pick then.
So that was right up there with what I wanted. So that means Nick Suzuki is off the board, right? I am not able to draft Nick Suzuki now.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
that is
I will say that was definitely Nick Suzuki was definitely going to be my first pick. I wasn't sure in what category, but he was going to be. So I got to wipe him off my board. So, okay, so I have 2 and 3 here. I know where there's depth. I know where there's not depth right now. Give me Patrick Laine's shot.
Yes, of course. That was the other one I was thinking of.
And then, I think I can wait a bit on this. Give me Lane Hutson's passing.
Excellent pick. Excellent.
So
pick.
My coin flip was Suzuki, Hudson, passing, and hockey sense. And I was just like, let's see what I can get. Yeah, Suzuki. My first pick, when I first thought of it, was Suzuki for passing, and then hockey sense. There's a bit of a, it's a bit more all encompassing. So I mean, it certainly makes sense. I actually think Suzuki for his hockey sense and Hudson for his passing is probably the right distribution between those two.
I think so. Because the other thing, too, here that we should mention is, like, if you look at the elite prospects, the way that they categorize each thing, passing is not just, like, being able to put the puck on somebody else's tape. It's the decisions of your timing. When do you make a pass? Yeah. Who do you pass to? It's also the deception that leads to a pass, because if you can deceive somebody the way that Hudson does, you've successfully given the player you're passing to an extra split second to do their move or their shot or whatever they're going to do. So there's more to it than just being able to tape. So taking Hudson here, I think, is an excellent pick. So far, you have the best shot on the team, probably the best passing on the team. I have the best hockey sense on the team. I think I want to take Caulfield's shot next because Caulfield's a very versatile player, and pretty soon, if you take him next for his puck handling, which I think is probably second behind Hudson, then I don't get a great shot anymore because Heineman I'm believing less in now, I think.
Yeah, I will say there's a bit of a drop-off now.
Absolutely.
We clearly know where the big four skills are. So I might go a little off the board here. I'm going to use my post-centennial pick and pick Shea Weber's physicality.
Darn. Darn. Maybe the best physicality of all time for the Montreal Canadiens, and that is saying something. Yeah. That is including Chris Nyland. That is including Larry Robinson. Shea Weber was an absolute monster, so that's a lovely pick.
I also found the post-centennial group to be fairly weak.
Yes.
When I really dove into it, like there's a couple shots, I was like, the shots are okay, but Linnaeus is better, and you need to prioritize current rostered guys. Weber's physicality. Those are basically like my top four picks were the Hudson, Suzuki, Laine, and Weber. So I'm happy I got 3 out of the 4 of them. So back over to you for the 6th overall pick and your 3rd pick.
So I wasn't necessarily going to Weber next, but I was hoping you would overlook him and I'd be able to take him elsewhere. But I'm not going to look at physicality now. I think I am going to go with, I want Matheson skating.
Yeah.
I want Mike Matheson skating.
I think what's also interesting in this is like, I think just by pure volume, we're both going to end up building forwards. So what defenseman attributes can you grab? So despite that, I know I just said that I've drafted 2 defensemen, but it's passing and physicality, and you just grab Mike Matheson skating. So it's actually funny enough, 3 of the first 6 picks are actually defensemen, despite the fact that you would expect a bit of a tilted slate there.
Yeah, it's true.
So, all right. So what exactly can I do here?
I do think on that note though, like regardless if you're creating a forward, like the players we create would be able to play either position and be an all-star because of how, the combination of all these factors, all the attributes.
So it's getting to be a bit slim pickings, I think, when we get to the current roster. So I'm just trying to, all right, well, I have to make a pick here, and there's 2 guys I want. I'm hoping one of them falls through the cracks. I think I know which one would. Give me Jake Evans for defense.
Very nice pick. Very nice pick.
So again, obviously this is like more of a bottom 6 defensive role, not necessarily a defenseman, but responsible player, great penalty killer. So I'm that's a transitionary skill and trait that I think we can work a lot with.
Now, what have we got here? Jeez. Slim pickings indeed. That was probably the best defensive guy. A couple years ago, I might have said Savard would be up there. I think he still is, just by the sheer fact that there's a lack of it. Carrier and Goulet are kind of up there as well. Like, taking either one of those guys, even Savard included, you'd have an above average defender in terms of a forward, like if we're creating forwards here, but probably just an average defender. Now it gets interesting. So what do I have left? I've done skating, shooting, hockey sense, passing, puck handling are important. What really sucks is that Alex Kovalev is not a past 2000 is a pre 2009, because taking Alex Kovalev over guys like, I don't know, Cornway, Gainey, like all these legends, seems like a shame. But who has better puck handling in the history of the Canadiens than Alex Kovalev? I don't know if there is one.
It's a tough one.
This is very, very tough now. So I think I want to go. I'm going to go defense.
Okay.
and I'm going to do my history pick. Pre-2009, I just don't know yet if it's Robinson or Gainey.
Okay, I thought I had someone else for defense pre-2009 that I was considering taking. I mean, I used it on Jake Evans. Jake Evans is nowhere near as these guys, but
now you could still pick Kovalev for like puck handling or somebody else. So now the question is, who is better defensively? Larry Robinson, arguably, but probably not arguably, like probably definitely the best defenseman in Montreal Canadiens history, or Bob Gainey, the guy who is maybe one of the best two-way forwards in the game in history.
Can I try to help you out here and give you one more option?
Please.
The guy that I was considering that's out of contention for me for this was Guy Carbonneau.
Another amazing.
He finished
amazing player.
top 5 in Selke voting, I believe, 8 straight years and 9 years out of 10. Won 3 of them.
So Gainey won. He's the only one to ever win 4. But Carbonneau is definitely on that same.
So that was the other guy I was thinking about in terms of defense. I was like, again, I'm not comparing Evans and Carbonneau, obviously, but we have to do skew a little bit more to the new guys. But Carbo was the other guy. I was like, so yeah, Robinson, Carbo, and Gainey. Those look to be. I mean, we don't have to keep Carbo in that discussion if you don't want them, but those are the ones you're looking at.
Yeah. I'm going to wait on this, I think. The more I think about it, like the more trouble I'm having with this, I'm going to take John Scott's size, 6'8", 260 pounds. No, I'm kidding. No, don't write that down. I'm not taking John Scott's size because I'm taking Hal Gill's size, 6'7", 240. No. I think I'm going to go with Andrei Markov's passing.
Well done. I was wondering.
I think I'm taking that.
Okay.
And I didn't have to rush that pick because you don't get to pick him anyway.
So, yeah, I guess you're using this as a post-2009 pick, right? Markov, I think.
Post-2009. Okay,
that makes sense.
Most of his seasons are post-2009. I think he had a couple prior, but most of them are post-2009.
Okay.
And so is there anybody better post-2009 in passing of the guys? Like, I think Suzuki beats him and Hudson beats him. Maybe those two. Like, Markov is a legend. There's nobody on the current squad who even comes close, I don't think. Out of anybody that's left, is there anybody else I'm omitting? I don't think so.
For passing?
Passing, like post 2009, was that a misstep?
Well, Subban hated the pass, so I don't know if it'd be PK. PK would just rush up the ice by himself, which is was exciting. If there was a spinorama attribute, that would have been first overall pick, PK Subban. No, I think that's probably a correct assessment. I mean, yeah, I don't know. The 2010s, like when you look back at it, you're like, well, David Dernay was very much the best forward passer on the team for 3 straight seasons. And this was a team making the conference final. Wasn't a good look. Okay, so back over to me. All right, so I think I have to, there are obviously better players. I still have we both still have our pre-centennial pick, but I need to, eventually the chickens will come home to roost here, and I will probably have to make a bad pick. But I'll take, for hockey sense, give me Juraj Slafkovsky.
Very nice pick. Very nice pick.
Probably the most talent left on the board for the current roster. Definitely. And was just trying to figure out where I can put him. It certainly wasn't going to be in skating. So give me hockey sense for Slafkovsky.
I think that's a great pick, dude.
So you have 4 picks left: puck handling, physicality, and defense, and size. And then I have skating, puck handling, and size. We both have our pre-centennial pick left.
So, and again, this, like, Robinson and Gainey probably should have been the first pick, but because there's options, and even Carbonneau, thank you for throwing that in, like, that's sort of on par with those guys. I'm still going to leave it because I think that there's a more pressing thing because you might take him for his size. I'm going to go Arbor Jackeye for physicality.
Oh, wow, okay.
It was sort of between him, Anderson, because Anderson's a bit faster, so he might check harder in the offensive zone, but I think Jackeye physicality-wise, you can't really get better than that on the current roster. The other guy was Slafkovsky for his puck battling, but you just took him. So it was sort of between Jackeye and Slafkovsky for physicality for me. I think I like Jackeye for that.
Yeah. Kovalev, puck handling.
Yeah, that's
amazing. It took us this long to get to him. I think we were both trying to play chicken and see how many picks can we get away with. I'm sad to leave Larry Robinson skating on the board, but puck handling for what's left of the current roster is suboptimal, to be nice.
Yeah.
So give me Covey for puck handling. Who, again, like, if we're ranked, it might be top 10 all time on the team when it comes to puck handling. It wasn't there every night, but
yeah. Top 10, forget top 10, man. He's top 3, I think. In a vacuum, he's top 3, maybe the best ever. If you put these guys up against their peers, then you got to talk about Lafleur. You got to talk about other guys. But like, could Kovalev out-deke Lafleur and all these other legends just like one-on-one? Definitely. Modern players are just better puck handlers, flat out. Also better equipment. That helps too. Okay, that's a very nice pick for puck handling. Puck handling, I think I'm going to have to leave to the end now. That's definitely the one that I have not planned out effectively. That being said, I just noticed Newhook's not bad for his puck handling. Certainly better than... Oh, there's Doc as well. There's Doc as well for puck handling, but I think Newhook's probably just a little quicker. And I think I'm going to go with that. I don't know if you want to help me out again, but like between Doc and Newhook... And then there's the defenseman. Like, Gooley's a good puck handler, but he's a good, simple, steady puck handler. He's not going to be deking guys out. So I think it's Newhook.
Okay.
I think I'm going to do that. That's my first, like, I guess I'll go with this pick.
Well,
but
yeah.
Sixth round, that's sort of where we're at.
I'm upset with that pick because I thought I was safe to keep him for my skating pick for Newhook. He's not a great skater, but man, he can fly. So that puts me in a bit of a bind here because I have to make my skating pick, and... It is slim pickings out here. Who's our best skater left? Is it Caden Gooley?
I think so. It's him or Doc, but I think I would take Caden Gooley. The one thing that we didn't consider skating-wise, I'm glad I took a defenseman too because he can skate backwards.
That's true.
Not that the forwards can't, but like that's his bread and butter. So
yeah,
Gooley.
Yeah,
I think Gooley's the way to go.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Gooley. A bit bummed that I lost the Newhook pick. I thought that was a safe one, but give me Gooley with my 7th round pick. Back over to you. You have defense and size left.
Surprise, surprise. Size is going to be the last thing off the board for both of us. And I have saved Robinson and Gainey for defense, and I want to shoot myself because I can't pick between the two of them. It's driving me absolutely bonkers. That's why I've waited this long, because I can't choose, Jordan. What's the right answer here? What do you think?
I'd pick Gainey.
You would? Yeah. Okay, wow. I mean, the only Selke winner 4-time, the only 4-time Selke winner.
Here's the thing with Robinson. Like, when I think Larry Robinson, I will think skating and passing before defense.
And physicality, too.
Yeah,
right?
like, defense would not be the first thing that I associate with Larry Robinson. It'd be like, it's the skating with the size, if that makes sense. But it's not necessarily his defensive play. It was still great. Still freaking Hall of Fame. He's still the best defenseman in the history of the franchise. Like, everybody calm down.
Pretty good.
But
pretty good. Okay.
That's, if we're splitting, it's again, and Bob Gainey's no chump. So.
Yeah, exactly. I appreciate the help. I'm going to go with what you said. I think you're right. I think the first one that occurred to me was Bob Gainey when I was preparing, and then I said, oh, what about Larry Robinson, the best defenseman we've ever had? Right. I'm going to go Gainey. I don't know if there's ever been a more effective centerman that we've had in terms of controlling the play of the game, in terms of also shutting down the top. Like, if my, create a Build-A-Bear player was going up against yours, and yours has Laine's shooting, Hudson's passing, he's physical like Weber, he's got Slavkovsky's hockey sense, he dekes like Kovalev, like unbelievable player. I think I probably want a Gainey type player to try and shut him down. Yeah. So I'm happy with this. Okay, thank you for the help. I appreciate you, buddy.
All right, so last pick for both of us, size. Going through my notes here, making sure Caulfield's not available. Actually, quite
Gallagher is.
Yeah, it's true. Galley's on the board. That'd be hilarious. Shea Weber's physicality with Brendan Gallagher's size.
If you took Gallagher's size, it wouldn't matter with the skill set that these players have. That's why size is the last thing, because it doesn't matter. We're building unbelievable players here, so.
Yeah, so this is completely arbitrary. There's like 3 guys that all fit the mold here. I'll go with Kirby Doc.
Great pick. Doc, 6'4", 221. He's lean, he's strong, he's tall. That's an excellent pick.
Last pick.
I am sad I didn't save John Scott and Hal Gill, but you know what? It's there were better options in history of the Montreal Canadiens. So who's left that's big? I think it's literally just Josh Anderson and Yoel Armia.
Alex Carrier is in there too. He's no chump.
Carrier. Oh, I must have mislabeled that on my board. I put 5'11", 174. That must be somebody else. So
that sounds like Jordan Harris, but I can double check.
Yeah, it could be. Alexandre Carrier is 5'11". No, I did have it right. 5'11".
He plays big. I'll give him that.
He does.
I view Alex Carrier as a bit of a bigger player. Okay, yeah. So you have Anderson,
Armia.
Pezzetta's not a small guy either.
Am I allowed to pick Jakub Dobesh? He's 6'4", 215.
I'll allow it. I'm good with that.
Inch. No, we'll do a goalie one another time. I'm going to take Josh Anderson,
yeah.
6'3", 226, and it's nice to
All
include
right,
him.
so our Build the Bear squads for our 100th episode of the podcast. Brian's, Mike Matheson skating, Cole Caulfield's shot, Andre Markov's passing, Alex Newhook's puck handling. I think we've identified a bit of a weak spot. Nick Suzuki's hockey sense, Arbor Jackey's physicality, Bob Flippin' Gainey's defense, and then Josh Anderson's size. My Build-A-Bear team. Caden Gooley skating, so we're fine. We're doing all right. And then Patrick Laine's shot, Lane Hudson's pass, Alex Kovalev's puck handling. I'm feeling great. Yuri Slavkovsky's hockey sense, which I feel like in this pick will age very well over the next 2 or 3 years. Shea Weber's physicality mixed with Jake Evans' defensiveness and Kirby Doc's size. How are we feeling about these two Bears?
I mean, add either one of these players to the Habs this year, and President's Trophy winner, Stanley Cup winner.
Yeah.
add both of them, and this is a dynasty. But no, like, it's what you would expect. You take the best possible attributes from current players and a couple ex-players, and you're left with something incredible. I do want to mention there, like, who are the other all-timers that you had on your list? A recent one, thinking like, it's kind of slim. I was thinking Paul Byron for his skating.
Okay.
Which is kind of interesting. And I thought Yvon Cournoyer for all time in terms of skating. The Road Runner, he has that name for a reason.
So I had Carbo obviously for defense, Larry Robinson for like 5 different categories, basically size, skating, passing, defense, like everywhere. Guy Lafleur's shot.
Yep. Maurice
Richard's shot. Just shot was so deep, and
Boom Boom as well.
It was just such a Boom Boom's wrist shot, honestly. There was just such a premium on current roster, and Laine's shot is also like not a joke. Pacioretty's shot, it was like my emergency like post 2000. Markov skipped my mind completely. And then Ilya Kovalchuk shot. That would have been my dark horse of like if I had lost Weber, I would have probably gone for Kovalchuk, forgetting again that Andrei Markov existed. Like that would have been my top 3. It would have been Weber's physicality, Markov skating, then Kovalchuk's shot probably.
It also hinged heavily on who had the first pick and second and how the thing went, because you had Hudson's passing, which like Markov or Hudson, either way you're laughing. That's sort of incredible. I think that sort of sums it up. I think that was sort of everybody on the list. And then obviously John Scott and Hal Gill for the size, 6'8", 6'7".
Easy.
Beasts.
Easy call. Yeah.
But,
I had Koivu written down as well as a pre-2009 guy for hockey sense.
Now, if we had done character, because that was another one that we had toyed with, and we just thought it's just too many categories, too many attributes. Character, Koivu comes into the conversation immediately, and then I think the only
Jean Beliveau.
Yeah, that's it. The only other possible option, the best option, maybe in the entire league in the history of the NHL, is Jean Beliveau.
Yeah.
So
that would have been a top 5 pick.
Of course.
I mean, there's so many. Again, Belivau's another guy like Beliveau, Lafleur, Robinson. Richard's a bit harder because it's so much. It's mostly 40s and 50s he plays, so it's hard to get. I mean, he was the best player for a decade. You can never knock that.
Yeah.
But Beliveau, Lafleur, Robinson are the 3 guys. You're like 4 different categories. It's do whatever you want with all of them. You can go skating with Lafleur as well. Like there's so many ways you could have split that up. But yeah, if we're doing character, Beliveau, Koivu. I mean, like 2 long-standing captains. Like those are. Yeah. I mean, even Shea Weber, you could bring character into there. You could squeeze in Carey Price. Like there's a lot of players, but it's usually the guys that they choose as captain, right? Like Nick Suzuki. Like go to character, look for the captain. Like, and that's why you can tell when there's like a weird captain pick. You're like, why did they do that? That was a weird one. Like they didn't have anyone good to pick. We don't have to rehash the Pacioretty, Gallagher, Subban thing, but like the right call was Gallagher. He was just too young because Gallagher fits in the mold of Weber, Koivu, Beliveau, Danfus.
Character guys,
Brian Giunta, very underrated captain, but is very much like no messing around, very professional, here to work. That was fun.
I think we should do one of these all time for Habs, because part of the difficulty here was having to say no to Cournoyer's speed and Robinson and like all these legends, because you can only pick one from that era. So maybe we should do one eventually of all time. But yeah, this I think was a blast. This was a lot of fun. Low pressure little game for our 100th episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And as Jordan said from the top, I want to say this as well. Thank you guys so much for checking us out, for listening. We love doing this. It's just sort of a fun little thing for us to do about the team that we love, and we're thrilled that people actually tune in and listen every week. So thank you guys very, very much.
Absolutely. Echo all those sentiments. We got some fun hockey. We got a month of fun hockey to watch. Whether they stay in the race or they slowly fall out, that is up for them to decide, but we'll be here to follow it every Monday on This Week in Habsland. That'll wrap up this week's episode. You can follow us on social media at Blue Sky and TikTok at Habsland Pod. If you like what you heard, feel free to share the podcast with friends, with family. Leave a 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple Podcast. Until next Monday, go Habs.